I've been working as a park ranger at Yellowstone National Park for about 17 years now, and I can no longer keep what I've seen to myself. My name is Luke Harrington, and I currently work in the Norris Geyser Basin area. The events I'm about to share with you are not urban legends that seasonal workers tell each other around the campfire. Every word is based on real events, and because of these events, different areas of the park are being closed without any explanation. Before I get into what happened last October, you need to understand something about Yellowstone. This place is massive. We're talking about nearly 3,500 square miles of wilderness, geothermal activity, and terrain so diverse that you could spend your entire life here and still discover new corners you've never seen. The park sees around 4 million visitors annually, and yeah, people go missing. More than you'd think. Most of the time, there's a reasonable explanation. Someone wanders off trail, gets disoriented, maybe falls into a thermal feature or gets too close to wildlife. We find them, or we find what's left of them, and that's that. It's tragic, but it makes sense. But then there are the other cases, the ones that don't make sense. The ones where experienced hikers vanish from well-marked trails in broad daylight, the ones where we find their belongings arranged in ways that seem almost deliberate, the ones where witnesses report seeing the missing person after they disappeared. But something about them seemed wrong. The senior rangers don't talk about these cases with the newer staff. There's an unspoken rule. You learn about it gradually, piece by piece, usually late at night in the ranger station when it's just the veterans swapping stories. They'll mention things casually, like how you should never respond if you hear your name called in certain areas after dark, or how if you see someone on the trail who looks exactly like your partner, but something feels off, you radio for backup immediately. I thought it was all hazing for the first few years, trying to spook the new guy. Then, I had my first real encounter. It was early autumn, 5 years into my career here. I was doing a routine evening patrol near the Gibbon River. Beautiful area, lots of lodgepole pines, the river running clear and cold. The sun was setting, painting everything in those rich amber tones that make you understand why people travel thousands of miles to see this place. I was maybe 2 miles from the nearest parking area when I heard someone calling for help. It was a woman's voice, clear as day, shouting, "Help me, please! Someone help me!" coming from somewhere off the main trail. Now this isn't unusual. People panic easily in the wilderness, especially when they realize they're lost. I immediately radioed in my position and headed toward the voice. But here's the thing. As I got closer, I realized the voice wasn't moving. It was coming from the exact same spot, same volume, same tone, just repeating, "Help me, please, someone help me," over and over again like a recording. And the cadence was too perfect, too rhythmic. I slowed down, hand on my radio, and called out, "This is Park Ranger Harrington. Can you tell me what's wrong?" The voice stopped immediately. The silence that followed was absolute. No birds, no wind, no river sounds, even though I was close enough to hear it. Just dead silence. And then I heard it, my own voice, coming from the same direction as the woman's cries. "This is Park Ranger Harrington. Can you tell me what's wrong?" Exact same inflection, exact same tone, like someone had recorded me and played it back. But that's not possible. There's no way someone could have done that so quickly. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the tree line where the sounds had come from. As I did, I saw movement. Not like an animal, not like a person either. It was too smooth, too fluid, like watching someone walk on the moon, if that makes sense. Weightless, but deliberate. I got back to my vehicle and radioed the incident in. My supervisor at the time, Bill Kramer, he just said, "You heard one. Don't go looking for it. We'll send a team to mark the area." That was it. No questions about what I saw, no skepticism, just acceptance. That's when I knew this was real. Bill retired 2 years ago, moved down to Arizona, but before he left, he pulled me aside and told me a few things. He said the Park Service has been documenting these incidents since the 1920s, maybe earlier. There's a file kept at park headquarters that's never digitized, never leaves the building. Every senior ranger contributes to it when they have an encounter. Bill said he'd written 7 entries in his 30 years here. 7 encounters. And he was lucky. The thing is, these mimics, that's what Bill called them, they're not consistent. Sometimes they copy voices, sometimes they copy appearances. Sometimes both. They seem to congregate around the geothermal features, particularly the geysers and hot springs. Bill's theory was that they're somehow connected to the geological activity beneath the park, that maybe they've always been here, living in the vast underground system of chambers and tunnels that feed Yellowstone's thermal features. He also told me something else, something that still keeps me up at night. In all the documented encounters, going back nearly a century, no one has ever gotten a clear photograph or video of these things. Every time someone tries, the equipment malfunctions. Cameras suddenly die, phones shut down, even the fancy thermal imaging equipment we've tried to use. It's like they exist in a frequency we can't quite capture. After that first encounter, I went 5 years without another incident. I'd hear stories from other rangers, always secondhand, always vague. A hiker who swore they saw their dead brother on the trail near Old Faithful. A maintenance worker who heard his daughter calling him from inside one of the closed thermal areas, even though his daughter was in school 3 states away. But nothing happened to me directly. I started to relax, started to think maybe I'd been lucky enough to have just one brush with whatever these things were, and that would be it for my career. Then last October happened. It started with a missing person report. Henry Castell, 42 years old, from Denver. He'd been visiting the park with his wife, Rebecca. According to her statement, they'd been hiking the Norris Geyser Basin trail together, taking pictures, enjoying the scenery. She said she'd bent down to tie her shoe, and when she stood up, Henry was gone. Just gone. She called his name, looked around, figured maybe he'd wandered a few feet ahead to get a better angle on Steamboat Geyser. But he was nowhere. She looked for maybe 10 minutes before she started to panic and ran back to the visitor center to report him missing. We initiated standard search procedures immediately. The area where he disappeared is actually relatively small, well-marked trails, mostly open terrain around the geyser basin. It should have been impossible for someone to just vanish there. But Henry was gone. We had 50 people searching within 2 hours, dogs, helicopters, the whole works. We covered every inch of that area 3 times. Nothing, no trace. His phone was off or dead, not pinging any towers. It was like he'd been plucked off the face of the earth. Rebecca was distraught, obviously. We had her staying at the Mammoth Hot Springs Hotel while the search continued, checking in with her regularly. She kept insisting something was wrong, that Henry wouldn't just wander off, that he was responsible, careful. I believed her. You get a sense for when someone's lying or hiding something, and she wasn't. She was genuinely terrified. On the 3rd day of the search, I volunteered for the night shift. We don't usually search at night, too dangerous, but we had some high-powered lights set up in the main basin area, and I figured I'd do a slow walk around the perimeter, see if maybe Henry had gotten disoriented and was sheltering somewhere nearby. It was around 11 p.m. when I heard it. Rebecca. Clear as a bell, echoing across the geyser basin, a man's voice, desperate, scared. Rebecca, I'm here. Please, I need help. It was coming from the direction of Steamboat Geyser. Now, Steamboat is the world's tallest active geyser, and it's unpredictable as hell. When it erupts, it can shoot water over 300 feet into the air. But between eruptions, which can be days or even years apart, it's relatively quiet, just steaming away like most of the other thermal features in the basin. I grabbed my radio. This is Harrington. I've got possible contact with the missing hiker near Steamboat, requesting immediate backup. The voice called out again. Rebecca, where are you? I'm so cold, please. I started moving toward it, slowly, keeping my flashlight trained on the boardwalk ahead of me. The steam was thick that night, rolling across the basin in dense white clouds that made visibility terrible. "Henry," I called out. "Henry Castell? This is Park Ranger Harrington. Can you see my light?" "Ranger," the voice responded. "Yes, I see you. I'm just off the boardwalk. I fell. I think I twisted my ankle." Red flag number 1. We specifically tell visitors never to leave the boardwalks. The ground around thermal features is unstable, often just a thin crust over boiling water and scalding mud. Henry and Rebecca had attended the safety briefing, according to our records. He would know better. "Henry, I need you to stay exactly where you are. Do not try to move. I'm going to come to you." "Please, hurry," the voice said. "I'm so cold." Red flag number 2. It was October, yeah, but it wasn't that cold. Maybe 50 degrees. And Henry had been missing for 3 days. If he'd been out here in the elements for that long, he'd be hypothermic at best, probably couldn't even speak clearly. But this voice sounded strong, coherent. I slowed my approach, hand moving to my sidearm. I don't carry it often, not much use against a bear or a bison, but something told me I needed it now. The steam cleared for just a moment, and I saw a figure standing about 20 feet away, just beyond the boardwalk railing. It was tall, wearing what looked like a dark jacket, standing perfectly still. "Henry?" I called again. The figure turned toward me, and even in the darkness, even with just my flashlight illuminating it, I could tell something was wrong. The proportions weren't quite right. The arms were too long, hanging down past where the knees should be. And when it moved, it was that same weightless, fluid motion I'd seen 5 years earlier. "Rebecca," it said again. But this time the voice was different, flatter, like it was losing the ability to maintain the mimicry. I backed away, keeping the light on it. "You're not Henry." The figure tilted its head, an unnaturally sharp angle, almost 90 degrees. Then it spoke in my voice. "You're not Henry." Perfect replication. Every inflection, every tone, like playing back a recording. I heard footsteps on the boardwalk behind me. My backup had arrived, thank God. It was Maya Ellsworth, one of the younger rangers, barely 2 years on the job. "Luke, what have we got?" she called out. "Maya, don't come any closer," I said, not taking my eyes off the figure. "Radio for more units. Tell them we've got a situation at Steamboat." The figure had started moving, drifting along the edge of the thermal area, staying just at the boundary between the solid ground and the dangerous terrain. It was circling us, slowly, deliberately. "Luke, what the hell is that?" Maya's voice was shaking. "Just radio it in," I said firmly. The figure stopped moving, and then it spoke in Maya's voice. "Luke, what the hell is that?" Maya made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. I could hear her fumbling with her radio, trying to make the call. Then the thing did something I've never been able to explain. Something that doesn't match any of the previous reports I've read in that file back at headquarters. It split. I don't mean it divided into 2 creatures. I mean the air around it seemed to fracture, like looking through broken glass, and suddenly there were multiple overlapping images of the figure, all occupying the same space but slightly offset from each other. And each one was mimicking a different person. One spoke in Henry's voice. "Please help me." Another in Rebecca's. "Where's my husband?" Another in mine. "You're not Henry." Another in Maya's. "What the hell is that?" And then one more voice I didn't recognize. Older, male, with an accent I couldn't place. "We've always been here." The steam rolled back in, thick and impenetrable, and when it cleared seconds later, the figure was gone. Maya and I stood there in silence for what felt like an eternity. When the other rangers arrived 5 minutes later, we were both still frozen in place, flashlights pointed at empty darkness. We searched the area again, found nothing. No footprints, no disturbances in the ground, nothing. Like it had never been there at all. But here's the thing that really messed me up. When we went back to review the audio from my radio transmission, the one where I'd called for backup, there was interference right around the time of the encounter. Heavy static. But underneath it, if you listened carefully, you could hear voices. Dozens of them, all speaking at once. Some in English, some in languages I didn't recognize. And they were all saying the same thing in their respective languages. We've always been here. The search for Henry Castell continued for 2 more weeks. We never found him. Rebecca eventually went home, broken and confused. The official report listed him as a missing hiker, presumed dead due to accidental fall into a thermal feature. His body would never be recovered. But I knew better, and so did every other senior ranger who read my report. Henry Castell didn't fall into a thermal feature. Henry Castell encountered something in those steam clouds, something that we've been sharing this land with for longer than we've been keeping records. Something that can take our voices, our appearances, maybe even our memories. And something that, according to that last voice I heard, has always been here, long before Yellowstone became a national park, long before there were rangers to document the disappearances. That's not even the worst part. 3 weeks after the incident, I got a phone call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Henry Castell's voice. "Luke," it said, "I'm still here, in the steam. We're all still here, and we're so cold." Then the line went dead. I had the call traced. It came from inside the park, from a payphone near the Norris Geyser Basin Visitor Center. That payphone hasn't worked in 6 years. After the Steamboat incident, I should have requested a transfer. Hell, I should have quit. But there's something about this place that gets into your blood, and despite the fear, despite knowing what's out there in those steam clouds, I couldn't leave. Maybe it's stubbornness, maybe it's a sense of duty, or maybe I just needed to understand what I'd encountered. I spent the next 2 months going through every incident report I could get my hands on. The official ones that make it into the park database are sanitized, boring even. Hiker disoriented, fell into thermal feature. Visitor ignored safety protocols, fatal accident, lost in wilderness, presumed deceased. All very neat, very explainable. But the real file, the one Bill Kramer told me about, that's different. I had to wait until the superintendent was away at a conference in Denver before I could access it. It's kept in a locked filing cabinet in his office, 3 inches thick, every page handwritten. Some entries date back to 1923, just a year after the Park Service was officially established. The earliest ones are harder to read, water-damaged and faded, but the stories they tell are consistent with what I experienced. One entry from 1931, written by a ranger named Thomas Whitfield, describes finding a family of 4 camped illegally near the fountain paint pots. He said they were all dead when he found them, arranged in a perfect circle around their campfire, no visible injuries. But here's the disturbing part. Each body's face was wrong. That's how he described it. Wrong. Like someone had tried to copy their features but didn't quite get the details right. The mouths were too wide. The eyes were slightly off-center. The proportions were uncanny valley at best. The official report said carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty camp stove. Another entry from 1956, this one from a ranger named Dorothy Kern. She reported tracking a lost child near the Black Sand Basin, following the girl's cries for help. Dorothy wrote that she chased the child for over an hour, always staying maybe 30 feet behind her, never quite catching up. The girl would occasionally look back, and Dorothy swore it was the same child from the missing person photo. But when she finally got close enough to grab the girl's shoulder, Dorothy said the child turned around and she was looking at herself. Her own face staring back at her, perfect in every detail, except for the eyes, which were completely black. Dorothy ran back to the station and collapsed. When they sent a search team to the area she'd indicated, they found the real missing child's body in a thermal pool. The medical examiner estimated she'd been dead for at least 3 days. There's no way Dorothy could have been chasing that girl. Dorothy requested an immediate transfer and left the park within the week. According to a note appended to her entry, she died 2 years later in a car accident in Montana. But another ranger who knew her wrote an addendum claiming Dorothy had become obsessed with mirrors after her encounter, covering every reflective surface in her house, terrified of seeing something else looking back at her. The file goes on, dozens of entries, rangers hearing their own voices calling them deeper into the backcountry. Hikers who vanished in front of witnesses, there 1 second and gone the next when the steam cleared. Park employees who reported seeing doppelgangers of themselves standing in prohibited areas, watching them work. One pattern I noticed is that the encounters seem to increase during periods of high geothermal activity. When Steamboat Geyser erupts, when there are earthquake swarms in the caldera, when new thermal features suddenly appear or old ones change behavior. That's when the mimics become more active. It's like they feed off the energy somehow, or maybe the energy allows them to cross over more easily from wherever they exist to where we can perceive them. There was also an entry from 1987 that made my blood run cold. A ranger named Marcus Powell had been stationed at Norris, my current location. He wrote about hearing strange sounds coming from the underground thermal areas, like voices echoing up through the ground itself. He started recording these sounds with audio equipment, trying to capture evidence. The recordings were stored in the ranger station at Norris. I went looking for them as soon as I finished reading his entry. It took me 3 days of searching through boxes of old inventory and forgotten equipment, but I found them. 6 cassette tapes, labeled in Marcus's handwriting with dates from April through June of 1987. I brought them back to my quarters and found an old tape player, sat down late at night when I knew I wouldn't be interrupted, put on my headphones, and pressed play. The first tape was mostly just ambient noise. Wind, the sound of bubbling hot springs, the hiss of steam vents. But about 15 minutes in, I heard it. Underneath the geothermal sounds, there was something else. Whispers. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all overlapping. I couldn't make out individual words, but the cadence sounded like speech, human speech. The second tape was worse. The whispers were louder, more distinct. I started to recognize some of the voices. They were saying names, just names, over and over again. Henry, Thomas, Sarah, William, Catherine. Some I recognized from the incident file, people who had gone missing in the park. Others I didn't know. By the third tape, I was seriously considering stopping. The whispers had become almost conversational in tone, like I was listening to dozens of people talking to each other in a room. Except the room was underground, surrounded by superheated rock and water. And occasionally, very occasionally, I would hear something that sounded like screaming. Quick, sharp, agonized, then cut off. The fourth tape is where things went completely sideways. About 20 minutes in, the whispers suddenly stopped. Complete silence for maybe 30 seconds. Then, a single voice spoke, clear as day, in perfect English. "Marcus, we know you're listening." I felt ice run down my spine. The voice continued. "Marcus, you should stop. This isn't for you. These sounds, these voices, they're not meant for human ears. We're not meant to be heard. We're not meant to be seen. We exist in the spaces between, in the heat and the steam and the mineral crust. We've been here since before your species learned to make fire. We'll be here long after you're gone." There was another pause. Then the voice said something that made me eject the tape immediately. "We're watching you right now, Marcus. We can see you in your quarters, sitting at your desk, wearing your blue uniform shirt. We can see the fear on your face. Don't make us come closer." I checked Marcus Powell's entry in the file again. In his final paragraph, written 3 weeks after his last recording, he said he was requesting an immediate transfer due to medical reasons. He never specified what those reasons were. I tried looking him up, see if he was still alive, maybe ask him some questions. Turns out Marcus Powell died in 1994. Suicide. He'd walked into the West Yellowstone Ranger Station one morning, said hello to all his former co-workers, then walked out to the parking lot and shot himself. No note, no explanation, no warning signs that anyone noticed. And that's just what's in the file. I started talking to the other senior rangers, the ones who've been here long enough to have their own stories. What I learned is that the file only represents a fraction of the encounters. Most rangers don't report them, either because they don't think they'll be believed or because they're scared of ending up like Dorothy Kern or Marcus Powell, obsessed and broken by what they've seen. Take Danny Redfield, for example. He's been at Yellowstone for 23 years, currently stationed at Old Faithful. Over drinks one night, he told me about an incident from 2011. A family had gotten separated near the Morning Glory pool, their 8-year-old daughter wandering off while the parents were taking pictures. Danny found her an hour later, sitting on a bench near the pool, completely calm, humming to herself. When Danny asked where her parents were, she said they were with the steam people. He figured she meant they were looking around the thermal features, so he radioed in that he'd found the girl and started walking her back to the visitor center to reunite them. But the girl kept talking about the steam people, how they were nice, how they showed her things beneath the ground, how they wanted her to come live with them because it was warm there and she would never be cold again. Danny laughed it off as the imagination of a scared kid. Then the girl stopped walking and pointed at a spot just off the boardwalk where the steam was particularly thick. "They're right there," she said. "Can't you see them?" Danny looked where she was pointing. He said he couldn't see anything at first, just the normal steam and geological features. But then the wind shifted, clearing the steam for just a moment, and he saw them. He described it as shadows with substance, like if a shadow could stand up and walk around independent of the thing casting it. There were 3 of them, tall and thin, their outlines constantly shifting and blurring as if they couldn't quite hold a solid form. They were watching him. Danny grabbed the girl's hand and walked as fast as he could back to the visitor center without actually running, which he said took every ounce of willpower he had. He reunited the kid with her panicked parents, didn't mention the steam people, just said she'd gotten turned around on the trails. But that night, alone in his quarters, Danny's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered it, and it was the little girl's voice. "Mr. Ranger, they followed you home. They want to know if you'll come visit them. They have so much to show you." Danny said he didn't sleep for 3 days after that. He requested a transfer to the entrance gate duties for 6 months, didn't want to be anywhere near the thermal features. Eventually, he went back to his regular posting, but he told me he still sometimes hears that little girl's voice in the steam, asking him to visit. The more I learned, the more I realized this wasn't just a Yellowstone phenomenon. I started researching other geothermal areas around the world, places with similar volcanic activity. Turns out there are stories everywhere. In Iceland, they have tales of the hidden people, creatures that live in the steam and lava fields. In New Zealand, the Maori have legends about Patupaerehe, spirit beings that dwell in the mists around volcanic areas. In Japan, there are stories of yokai that inhabit the hot springs and volcanic vents. What if all these different cultures are describing the same thing? What if wherever there's geothermal activity, wherever the deep heat of the earth comes close to the surface, these things exist? They're not ghosts, not in the traditional sense. They're something else, something that's always been here, thriving in an environment we can barely survive in for minutes at a time. I brought this theory to Dr. Sarah Mitchell, one of the geologists who regularly works in the park, studying the Yellowstone supervolcano. She's brilliant, PhD from Stanford, published dozens of papers on volcanic systems. Over coffee at the Mammoth Dining Hall, I carefully broached the subject, trying not to sound like a complete lunatic. Hypothetically, I said, if there were organisms that could survive in extreme heat near volcanic features, what form might they take? Sarah looked at me over her coffee cup, and I swear there was something in her expression that told me she knew exactly why I was asking. "Extremophiles," she said. We already know they exist. Bacteria that thrive in boiling water, archaea that live in acidic hot springs. But if you're asking about something more complex, something that could interact with the environment in more sophisticated ways. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The energy available in a place like Yellowstone is immense. Heat, pressure, mineral content, electromagnetic fields from the magma chamber. If something evolved to harness that energy, to exist in those conditions, it would be so different from us that we might not even recognize it as life. Could they be intelligent? I asked. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned in closer and spoke softly. I've been studying Yellowstone for 15 years. I've seen things in the thermal areas that don't match any known geological processes. Patterns in the mineral deposits that look almost deliberate. Sounds recorded on seismographs that have a rhythmic quality, almost like language. Strange electromagnetic readings that spike in certain areas. The official explanation is always geological, always natural processes we don't fully understand yet. She stopped, took a sip of coffee, then continued. But off the record, I think there's something down there. Something we don't have the tools or the framework to properly identify. And I think it's been there for a very long time. Have you ever encountered them directly? I asked. Sarah's expression went dark. Once. 3 years ago, I was taking thermal readings near Porcelain Basin at night. I turned around and my graduate assistant was standing behind me, or at least I thought it was him. He was supposed to be back at the lab. This version of him asked me what I was doing, asked to see my data. I showed him, and he looked at it for a minute, then handed the clipboard back and said, "You're getting close, Sarah. Too close. Maybe it's time to study somewhere else." Then he walked off into the steam. I tried to follow, but he just vanished. When I got back to the lab, my actual graduate assistant was there, had been there all night. I asked him where he'd been half an hour ago, and he showed me time-stamped security footage of him working in the lab the entire time. Sarah stood up, gathering her things. I took his advice. I focused my research on the purely geological aspects now. The magma chamber, the caldera dynamics, earthquake predictions. I don't do nighttime fieldwork near thermal features anymore. Before she left, she turned back to me. Luke, whatever you encountered out there, whatever you're investigating, be careful. These things, whatever they are, they've had millions of years to understand this environment. We're the visitors here, not them. And I don't think they appreciate us trying to understand them too deeply. That conversation was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've been having dreams. Not nightmares exactly, but dreams where I'm walking through the park at night and everything is wrong. The thermal features are in different locations. The geysers erupt with steam that's thick and dark, almost like smoke. And there are figures everywhere, standing just at the edge of the steam, watching me. In the dreams, I can hear them talking. Not in English, not in any language I recognize, but somehow I understand what they're saying. They're talking about us, about humans, about how we've changed the land, how we've built our roads and buildings on top of their home. They're not angry, exactly. It's more like confusion. They don't understand why we're here, why we would want to live in such a cold, thin, weak environment when we could live with them in the heat and the pressure and the mineral-rich waters. And they keep asking me to come down, to come deeper, to come home. I wake up from these dreams drenched in sweat, my room filled with the smell of sulfur, even though I'm miles from any thermal feature. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear that whisper from the cassette tapes. We're watching you, Luke. We can see you in your quarters. Don't make us come closer. I've started keeping my lights on all night. I've stopped working evening shifts unless absolutely necessary. And I've begun documenting everything just like the rangers before me, adding my own entries to that file in the superintendent's office. Because here's what I've realized. The mimics aren't just copying us, they're studying us, learning us. And with each encounter, each recording, each photograph attempt, they're getting better at it. The early reports describe crude approximations, voices that were almost but not quite right, appearances that fell into the uncanny valley. But my encounter with the figure at Steamboat? That thing had Henry Castell's voice down perfectly. And when it copied mine and Maya's voices, there was no way to tell the difference. They're evolving, or adapting, or whatever these things do. And I don't know what happens when they perfect their mimicry. When they can copy us so perfectly that there's no way to tell the difference between a real person and one of them. But I think we're getting close to finding out. The dreams got worse. Every night, the same scenario. Walking through Yellowstone at night, the thermal features rearranged, and those figures made of steam and shadow watching me from every angle. But something new started happening about 3 weeks ago. I began recognizing the figures. At first, I thought it was just my subconscious pulling from memory, creating familiar faces in the dreamscape. But then I started to notice details. One of the figures looked exactly like Thomas Whitfield, the ranger from the 1931 entry. I'd seen his photo in the park archives, an old black and white picture from his personnel file. In my dream, he was standing near the fountain paint pots, wearing his vintage ranger uniform, staring at me with those two wide eyes that the entry had described on the dead family he'd found. Another figure was Dorothy Kern, the ranger who'd chased her own doppelganger in 1956. She was always in the same spot in my dreams, near Black Sand Basin, just standing there with her arms at her sides, watching me pass. When I finally worked up the courage to approach her in one dream, she turned to face me, and just like in her report, her eyes were completely black. "Dorothy," I said in the dream. She smiled, but it was wrong. Too many teeth, the smile extending past where it should physically stop. "They kept me," she said. "They liked my face. They wear it sometimes, when they want to understand how you work, how your fear works." "What are they?" I asked. "Older than fear," she said. "Older than anything you have words for. They're the heat and the pressure and the weight of stone. They're what happens when the earth itself learns to think." Then she reached out to touch my face, and I woke up screaming. Maya found me the next morning looking like hell. I'd barely slept, spent most of the night making coffee and reading through the incident file again, looking for patterns, looking for answers. She sat down across from me in the break room and didn't say anything for a minute, just studied my face. "You're dreaming about them," she finally said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "Me too," she admitted. "Ever since that night at Steamboat. I see them everywhere now, not just in dreams. Sometimes when I'm driving through the park alone, I'll see someone standing just off the road, and when I look in the rearview mirror, they're gone. Or I'll hear my name called from the woods, but I know better than to answer now." "Have you told anyone?" I asked. "Who would I tell? The superintendent? He'd send me for a psych eval, my family. They'd want me to quit. Other rangers? Most of them would think I'm losing it." She paused. "I'm telling you because I know you've seen them too, and I need to know I'm not going insane." "You're not," I said. "This is real. All of it." Maya pulled out her phone and showed me something. I started doing research, not just the park's incident reports, but missing persons cases around Yellowstone going back decades. The numbers don't add up, Luke. The Park Service reports maybe 2 or 3 people per year going missing in Yellowstone, with fatal outcomes. But when I cross-referenced with the National Missing Persons Database, there are dozens of cases of people who were last seen in or near the park that are never included in the official count. She pulled up a spreadsheet. "Look at this. From 1995 to now, there are at least 87 cases of people who vanished near the park's geothermal areas who aren't in any official Park Service tally. They're written off as leaving the park before disappearing, or their cases are transferred to other jurisdictions, or they're just never connected to Yellowstone at all in the official records." 87 people, I said quietly. "Minimum," Maya corrected. That's just what I could verify through public records. God knows how many more there are going further back, or in cases that were never properly documented. I felt sick. Why would the Park Service hide this? I don't think they are, not consciously. I think it's more like institutional amnesia. Every time there's an encounter, the official report gets sanitized. The weird details get left out. It gets classified as a standard missing person case or an accident. And over decades, the patterns get obscured. The only people who know the truth are the rangers who've experienced it directly, and most of them are too scared to talk about it. She leaned closer. But here's what really freaks me out. I found a reference in a FOIA request response from the 1970s. Someone had asked about unusual disappearances in the park, and there's a single line in the response that says, "Matters regarding subsurface phenomena are classified for reasons of national security and public safety." Subsurface phenomena, I repeated. They know. The higher-ups, the Park Service Administration, maybe even the Department of the Interior. They know something is down there. Maya nodded. And they've decided the public doesn't need to know. Maybe they think it would cause panic, or maybe they think there's nothing they can do about it, so why bother? But Luke, people are dying. People are disappearing. And we're just letting it happen. She wasn't wrong. But what could we do? Go public with stories about steam creatures that mimic people? We'd be laughed out of our jobs at best, committed at worst. There has to be a way to prove it, I said. Physical evidence, something undeniable. I've been thinking about that, Maya said. What if we don't try to record them directly? What if we look for the effects they have on the environment? Dr. Mitchell said she'd found patterns in mineral deposits, anomalous electromagnetic readings. What if we documented that? Built a case based on physical, measurable phenomena instead of eyewitness testimony? It was a good idea, scientific, logical, defensible. But I had a bad feeling about it. Sarah Mitchell told me she stopped investigating this because she got too close, I said. She had an encounter, and something that looked like her assistant told her to back off. Did she back off because it told her to, or because she was scared? Maya asked. Because I'm scared too, but I'm more scared of doing nothing. How many more people have to disappear before someone does something? She had a point. I'd been content to just document my experiences, add to the file, and hope someone else would eventually solve the mystery. But Maya was right. That was just passing the problem to the next generation of rangers who would do the same thing, and on until something changed. Okay, I said. We investigate, but carefully. We don't go out alone, we don't do nighttime fieldwork near the thermal features, and if anything weird happens, we retreat immediately. Agreed? Agreed, Maya said. That's how we ended up back at Norris Geyser Basin 2 nights ago, armed with electromagnetic field detectors, thermal cameras, and audio recording equipment. We arrived just before sunset, planning to set up our equipment and monitor the area for a few hours before packing up and leaving well before midnight. The basin was closed to tourists for the evening, giving us unrestricted access. We set up 3 recording stations around Steamboat Geyser, each equipped with cameras, EMF detectors, and audio recorders. The plan was to sit back in the visitor center, monitoring everything remotely, staying safe and warm while the equipment did the work. For the first 2 hours, nothing unusual happened. We recorded normal geothermal activity, standard EMF readings consistent with the electromagnetic field generated by the heat and mineral content of the thermal features. The audio picked up wind, bubbling hot springs, and the occasional rumble of underground plumbing. Then, around 9 p.m., the EMF detectors all spiked simultaneously. I'm talking about a massive spike, way beyond anything that should occur naturally. The readings jumped from background levels of about 2 to 3 milligauss to over 50 milligauss in a matter of seconds. All 3 stations registered the spike at the exact same moment. What the hell could cause that? Maya asked, staring at the monitors. I don't know, I said. Geomagnetic storm, maybe? But that should show up gradually, not all at once. Then, the thermal cameras started going haywire. The screens showed rapid temperature fluctuations in the area around Steamboat, but not in a pattern consistent with normal geothermal activity. The hot spots were moving, shifting position, forming patterns that looked almost geometric. "Are you seeing this?" I asked Maya. She nodded, face pale in the glow of the monitors. "That's not natural. Those patterns, they're too regular." The audio recorders crackled to life with that familiar sound, the whispers I'd heard on Marcus Powell's tapes, dozens of voices speaking at once, overlapping. Unintelligible. But underneath it, there was a rhythm, a cadence that sounded almost like breathing. Then, on camera 2, the one pointed directly at Steamboat, we saw movement. The steam rising from the geyser was behaving strangely, not dispersing the way it should in the evening breeze. It was coalescing, forming shapes, vaguely humanoid figures that rose up from the thermal feature and stood there, swaying slightly. "Count them," I said to Maya. She did. 12. No, wait. More are forming. 15. 20. She paused. "Luke, they're not dispersing. Steam shouldn't do that. It should rise and dissipate, not hold a solid form." The figures started moving, walking across the basin toward our cameras. As they got closer, we could make out more details. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with elongated limbs and bodies that seemed to phase in and out of solidity. Where they walked, the temperature readings on our thermal cameras spiked, showing heat signatures of over 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing living should be that hot and still moving around. They reached the first camera station and gathered around it. For a moment, they just stood there, these impossible beings made of steam and heat, staring at the camera. Then, one of them reached out toward the lens. The video feed cut to static. "We lost camera 1, Maya said, her voice shaking. The figures moved to camera 2. They were faster now, gliding across the ground with that weightless motion I'd seen before. As they approached, the audio feed from that station picked up something new. They were talking, not in the overlapping whispers, but in clear, distinct voices. And they were speaking English. "Why do they watch us?" one voice said. It sounded like a middle-aged man. "They want to understand," another voice answered. This one, a woman's. "They can't understand," a third voice, younger. "They're cold. They live in the cold. They don't know what it means to be warm, to be connected to the heat." "Should we show them?" the first voice asked. There was a pause, then a different voice spoke. This one I recognized. It was Henry Castell's voice. "Yes, show them. They need to understand why we can't leave." Camera 2 went to static. The figures turned toward the visitor center, toward us. Even through the distance and the darkness, I could feel them looking at us. The EMF detectors in the building started spiking, even though we were hundreds of yards from any thermal feature. "We need to go," I said. "Now." Maya didn't argue. We grabbed the laptop showing the feeds from camera 3, still functioning, and headed for the door. As we stepped outside, the temperature hit us. It should have been in the 50s, maybe low 60s at most, but it felt like stepping into a sauna, humid and oppressive, the air thick with heat that had no apparent source. The figures from the basin were closer than they should have been, crossing the distance between Steamboat and the visitor center in impossible time. They were maybe 50 yards away and closing. We ran for the truck. I fumbled with the keys, hands shaking, finally got the door open. Maya jumped in the passenger side, still clutching the laptop. I started the engine and threw it into gear, not even bothering with seatbelts, just focusing on getting away from those things. As we drove off, I looked in the rearview mirror. The figures had stopped at the edge of the parking lot, just standing there, watching us leave. And then they did something I'll never forget. They waved. Not a threatening gesture, not hostile. Just a simple wave, like you'd give to a friend who was leaving. Like they were saying goodbye. We drove in silence back to park headquarters, neither of us sure what to say. When we got back, Maya immediately pulled up the footage from camera 3 on the laptop. the only station that hadn't been destroyed. The video showed everything we'd seen from the visitor center, but the audio had captured something else. While the figures were approaching our other cameras, before they'd destroyed them, there was a conversation. Clear as day. "They're afraid," one voice said. "Of course they're afraid," another answered. "We look like death to them. All heat and no form. They can't see us the way we really are. Should we try to show them? We've tried before. It never works. Their minds aren't built for it. When we reveal ourselves completely, when we try to share our true form, they break. They can't handle it. What about the ones we've kept, the ones who went deep? They understand now, but they're not human anymore. There's something in between. Not us, not them. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe that's how we bridge the gap." Then there was a longer pause, and a voice I didn't recognize, deeper and older sounding than the others, spoke. The ranger who's watching, the one called Luke. He's been dreaming. He's been seeing us in his sleep. That means he's close. His mind is opening to the frequencies. Maybe he could be the bridge. My blood ran cold. "Should we take him?" another voice asked. "No," the deep voice said, "and not yet. Let him come to us willingly. Let him choose. That's how it has to work. They have to choose to understand, or the transition fails and we're left with another broken mind." The audio cut off there as camera 3 died. Maya and I sat in the truck, parked outside headquarters, just staring at the screen. "They want you to join them," Maya finally said. "They're trying to recruit you or convert you or whatever the hell these things do." "I know," I said quietly. "You can't, Luke. You saw what happened to Marcus Powell. You saw what happened to Dorothy Kern. These things, whatever they are, humans aren't meant to interact with them on that level. It breaks us." "But what if it doesn't have to?" I said. "What if there's a way to understand them without losing yourself? What if that's the answer to stopping the disappearances?" Maya grabbed my arm hard. "Listen to yourself. That's not you talking, that's them. They've gotten into your head through the dreams. This is what they do. They make you think you can bridge the gap, that you can be special, that you can understand, and then they take you, and you end up dead or worse." She was right. I knew she was right. But part of me, a part that was growing larger every day, wanted to know. Wanted to understand what these things were, how they thought, what they wanted. And yes, wanted to know what it would be like to exist in their world, in the heat and the pressure and the ancient stone. "We need to destroy the evidence," Maya said. "All of it. The recordings, the research, everything. And we need to request transfers out of Yellowstone. Tonight." "You know they won't let us leave," I said. "Not now. Not after what we've documented." "They can't stop us from leaving," Maya protested. "Can't they?" I gestured at the laptop. "They've been watching us this whole time. They know we're trying to expose them. You really think they're going to just let us walk away?" As if in answer, Maya's phone rang. Unknown number. She looked at me, face pale, and I nodded. She put it on speaker. It was her own voice on the other end of the line. "Maya," her doppelganger said, "we need to talk. You've been asking questions, digging into things that should stay buried. It's not safe. You need to stop." "Who is this?" Maya demanded, even though we both knew the answer. "I'm you," the voice said. "Or I will be eventually. That's how this works. We find someone who's curious, someone who's brave enough to look deeper, and we offer them a choice. Join us, or spend the rest of your life knowing we're here, knowing we're watching, knowing that any day we might decide you know too much." "That's not a choice," I said, leaning toward the phone. "Luke?" The voice shifted, became mine. "You've been dreaming about us. You've been learning our language, even if you don't realize it yet. You're special. Your mind works in ways that might survive the transition. We could use someone like you." "To do what?" I asked. "To explain us to your kind. To help them understand that we're not monsters, not predators. We're just different. We exist in the heat and the deep places, and sometimes your people wander into our space and we don't know how to interact without hurting them. But with your help, we could learn. And all the people who disappeared? Henry Castell? The others? Maya demanded. There was a long pause. When the voice spoke again, it sounded sad, almost regretful. Accidents, it said. Misunderstandings. We try to communicate. We try to show them what we are, and their minds can't handle it. They break, or they run and fall into thermal features, or they go so deep trying to find us that they can't find their way back. We don't mean to hurt them. We're just so different from you that the gap is almost impossible to bridge. Almost, I repeated. Almost, the voice confirmed. But you, Luke, you might be able to bridge it. Your mind is flexible enough, curious enough, and if you succeed, you could save so many others. You could be the translator between our species. Don't listen to it, Maya hissed at me. But I was listening, and God help me, part of me wanted to say yes. I need time to think, I said. You have until the next eruption of Steamboat, the voice said. When the geyser erupts, the barrier between our world and yours is at its thinnest. That's when you can cross over safely if you choose to. Or you can leave Yellowstone, never come back, and spend the rest of your life wondering what you could have learned. The call disconnected. Maya and I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Steamboat's eruption cycle is unpredictable. It could be next week, it could be next year. I know, I said. You're actually considering this, she said, and it wasn't a question. I have to, I said. If there's even a chance I could stop the disappearances, stop people from dying, I have to try. And if you can't? If you end up like Marcus or Dorothy or all the others? I didn't have an answer for that. That was 2 nights ago. Since then, I've been preparing. I've documented everything, added it all to the file at headquarters. I've written letters to my family, explaining as much as I can without sounding insane. And I've been listening to the dreams, trying to understand what these things are really saying. Yesterday, the seismographs detected increased activity beneath Steamboat Geyser. The geologists are saying it could erupt within the next few days, maybe sooner. I'm writing this because I need someone to know the truth. If I don't come back, if this goes wrong, at least there will be a record. And if you're reading this, whether you're a park ranger or a visitor or just someone interested in Yellowstone's mysteries, please remember this. The mimics aren't evil. They're not demons or monsters. They're just different from us in ways we can barely comprehend. They live in the heat and the deep places. They think in frequencies we can't hear. They exist on a time scale that makes human lives seem like heartbeats. And sometimes, when our worlds overlap, tragedy happens. But maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe someone can bridge that gap. Maybe that someone is me. Or maybe I'm just another name that will get added to that file, another ranger who got too curious and paid the price. I guess I'll find out soon. The seismographs are showing increasing activity. Steamboat is getting ready to erupt. And when it does, I've decided I'm going to be there. I'm going to stand at the edge of the geyser basin, and I'm going to let whatever happens happen. Maybe I'll learn something that helps future rangers keep people safe. Maybe I'll find a way to communicate with these beings, to establish some kind of understanding. Or maybe I'll end up another mystery, another entry in that file, another story that gets told late at night to scare new recruits. But I have to know. After everything I've seen, after all the dreams and the voices and the impossible things that exist in the steam, I have to know what's really down there in the heat and the ancient stone. Maya thinks I'm making a mistake. She might be right. But she also agreed to keep monitoring from a safe distance, to record whatever happens. If I succeed, we'll have proof. If I fail, well, at least there will be a record of what I tried to do. The dreams have been different the last 2 nights. Clearer, more vivid. I can almost understand the language now, the rhythm and pattern of how these things communicate. It's not words exactly, it's more like feelings transmitted through heat and vibration, emotions encoded in the pressure of steam and the crystallization of minerals. They're not trying to hurt people, they're trying to talk to us, they're trying to make us understand. But human minds aren't built for that kind of communication, so it comes out wrong, twisted, frightening. But maybe mine can adapt. Maybe I can learn their language. Maybe I can be the bridge. Or maybe I'm deluding myself, falling into the same trap that caught Marcus Powell and Dorothy Kern and all the others. Maybe this is just what happens when human curiosity meets something so alien that the very attempt to understand it breaks us. I'll know soon enough. The park superintendent just called. Steamboat is showing all the signs of an imminent eruption. They're closing the basin to all visitors. But I have ranger access. I can be there when it happens. This is it. If you're reading this, and I haven't updated it with what happened, then I guess that means the experiment failed. I hope Maya makes it out okay. I hope she destroys all our research and gets as far from Yellowstone as possible. And I hope future rangers are smarter than me, that they leave the mysteries alone and just focus on keeping visitors safe. But I also hope, in some small way, that what I'm about to do helps. That maybe by trying to bridge the gap, I make it easier for the next person who attempts it. That maybe someday, humans and whatever these things are can coexist without tragedy. I'm heading to Norris Geyser Basin now. The steam is rising thick from Steamboat, thicker than I've ever seen it. The EMF readings are off the charts, and I can hear them in my mind now, not through equipment or recordings, but directly. They're singing, or calling, or whatever it is they do, and they're asking me to come home, to come down into the heat, to come down into the ancient places where they've been waiting. I'm going. God help me, I'm going. If I can learn their language, if I can survive the transition, I'll try to come back and explain what I've learned. But I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if anyone who goes that deep can ever really return. But I have to try. For Henry Castell, for all the others who vanished, for all the people who will come to Yellowstone in the future, unknowing and unprepared. I have to try. The steam is calling. Steamboat is ready to erupt, and I'm ready to see what's waiting for me in the heat and the deep places beneath the stone. Wish me luck. Luke Harrington, Senior Park Ranger, Yellowstone National Park, October 2024. This document was found on Luke's laptop 3 days after he disappeared. Steamboat Geyser erupted on October 14, 2024, at approximately 11:47 p.m. Luke was present at the basin at the time, according to Visitor Center security footage. The cameras captured him walking toward the geyser as it began to erupt, and then the footage goes to static. No trace of Luke Harrington has been found. The official report lists him as a missing park ranger, presumed deceased due to thermal feature accident. His name has been added to the memorial at park headquarters, alongside the other rangers who died in service. But I know the truth. Luke didn't die. He crossed over, he went down into the heat and the deep places, and he's with them now, whatever they are. I hope he found what he was looking for. I hope he learned their language, and I hope someday he finds a way to come back and tell us what he discovered. But I'm not waiting to find out. I've requested a transfer to Acadia National Park in Maine. No geothermal features there, no steam, no heat, no ancient things that whisper in dreams. I'm done with Yellowstone. I'm done with mysteries. And if you're smart, if you ever visit Yellowstone, you'll stay on the boardwalks, you'll ignore any voices you hear in the steam, and you'll never, ever try to understand what's living in the deep places beneath the stone. Some mysteries are meant to stay buried. Luke didn't believe that, and now he's gone. Don't make the same mistake he did. Maya Ellsworth, former park ranger, Yellowstone National Park, October 2024.